right off the bat, though, was Lamar Jackson was just hit with the non-exclusive franchise tag by the Baltimore Ravens. The era where we thought that maybe we could get some level of clarity on the Lamar Jackson era isn't happening. With it being non-exclusive, he's still able to negotiate with other teams on a potential contract. The way the non-exclusive works is it's going to be for roughly $32 million. He can negotiate with other teams, sign a deal if he wants to. If he signs a deal with another team, the Ravens have the right to match. And if the Ravens decide not to match, then the team has to trade the Ravens 2 first-round picks in order to get him. So what's your take on all of this?
I watched a TikTok earlier that I think really encapsulated everything I felt about it, but this is just such a masterclass move by the Ravens for like they clearly just couldn't come eye to eye with Lamar over the past 2 years. Like they were trying to get this deal figured out and they couldn't. So it really feels like they just threw up their hands and said, you know what, fine, go find a deal and either we love it and we'll match it, or even maybe throw you some extra, or we're gonna let you walk because we can't sit here and dick around with one position for 4 off seasons in a row. Like it seems to me like just a really well ran organization doing what needs to be done in this situation, because every report that comes out is like they're hundreds of millions of dollars, or I guess $100 million off on the guarantee side. So I really think the Ravens are like, okay, you know what, if you can get the Deshaun contract and someone's willing to pay it, we will take 2 firsts for you. Like, good luck, Lamar.
Yeah, and for the longest time, I was like, Ravens, what are you doing? Like, don't mess around with this really special player. I know we're kind of in two different spots when it comes to Lamar. I think he's generational. You think he's just like really good, which is fair. He's had some downs since his MVP season. But in my opinion, when you have like a top 10 guy like that, like unequivocally a top 10 quarterback, you don't mess around with your food, right? You don't play with your food. And the Ravens just seemed like they were dicking around with negotiations. They're like, we're going to lowball you. We're just going to figure something out. You don't have an agent. We can kind of give you less money. But every report since I started feeling that way has been the opposite. The reports have been he's been offered 5 years with $133 million guaranteed up front. That is huge. That is record breaking. That's right up there with the Deshaun Watson contract. The reports have been that if they hit him with the exclusive franchise tag, where he couldn't leave the team at that point, he wouldn't play. And it would be for more money. It'd be $45 million is what they're projecting for it right now, which is tops in the league pretty much. If he wouldn't play and then he would just sit out for the year, what are the odds that they're going to negotiate and find something in that time? Probably not very high, at which point Lamar would then just leave the team for nothing. So I agree with you. I think this is very smart. I think the Ravens now lock in some level of return for Lamar Jackson. 2 first-round picks really isn't a lot, but that is a hell of a lot better than nothing, which is kind of their other option at this point. There's always a possibility, too, that something similar to the Davante Adams deal or the Frank Clark deal from a few years ago from the Seahawks to the Chiefs ends up happening, where another team comes in, signs Lamar Jackson to a contract, and then in order to incentivize the Ravens to not match that, they end up doing a trade. So like last year, for example, the Raiders traded a first and a second round pick to the Green Bay Packers for Davante Adams, and then they were able to sign him to their long deal. So there's a lot of different options here. And I feel like this whole thing's going to get very, very messy by the end of it. But I think at the end of the day, the Ravens found a way to be smart about this and lock in either having a Lamar Jackson in their house or a replacement for Lamar Jackson in their house. So I think that's what makes this really smart. Looking at the Lamar Jackson options after this, though, I just want to kind of run through all the different options because, like, which team doesn't want Lamar Jackson at this point? There's a lot of good places for him to go. So I'm just going to run through the teams. You tell me 1 through 10 how much a team intrigues you for Lamar Jackson destination. 1 being you don't care for it. 10 really intriguing. So we're just going to run through a ton.
Okay.
Houston Texans.
5.
Why?
They have too much rebuilding to do. I don't think it makes sense. They can get Bryce or CJ here. I think you just build around a rookie contract.
Yeah. Atlanta.
10. Love it. This NFC South is up for grabs. They've got the offense to do it, an okay defense, but it just makes sense, honestly.
Yeah, there's a weird report that a handful of teams don't want Lamar, which is kind of wild to come out just hours after the whole thing happened. And Atlanta, interestingly, was one of those teams, which is weird because they were willing to give up 3 first-round picks reportedly to get Deshaun Watson, but don't want to give up 2 for Lamar. Strange. Las Vegas.
It's like a 3. I just don't see it there. They have a lot of holes to fill, like Houston, and they already gave up picks to get Devontae. Like they're in a weird spot. I think they're just kind of in a kind of an NFL purgatory here for a few years.
Tennessee Titans.
That's like an 8 or 9. I love that. Some people think that you haven't given Tannehill a fair shake, but I think Lamar they'd basically just build the Ravens offense, and Vrabel would love it to just have a mixture of Derrick Henry and Lamar running it down your throat.
Yeah, Tannehill low key, really high cap hit too. It's like at 38 million next year. So if you could get off that contract as well, I think that'd be really smart for them. Washington Commanders.
4, mainly just because I don't want to see Lamar in Washington. I don't want to see any amount of success come to Washington. I think team wise it makes sense. Maybe like a 6 or 7 because they definitely need a player. But I don't love it personally.
Lamar to the DC Defenders confirmed. New
Confirmed.
England Patriots.
1, and Mac I trust.
San Francisco 49ers.
2, they've already spent too much capital on the quarterbacks they have. Like they just be in such a weird spot where you can't get enough return on Trey Lance to make it worth sending 2 more first round picks for another quarterback.
Okay. Detroit Lions.
I love that. I'd say like 8 or 9. I think you would love it too.
I'd be so excited. My rumor that I started weeks ago, and you were calling me a madman, and it all worked out. Green Bay Packers.
2, they've got so much going on right now. I don't think being in the Lamar sweepstakes is going to help that team out.
To replace Rodgers though, like you can kind of pick up where you left off.
Jordan Love, man, they believe in him. He's definitely not Lamar, but who knows? He can run an offense perhaps.
Indianapolis Colts.
7 or 8. I think it makes sense. They have some holes to fill, but locking down that quarterback instead of trusting that Will Levis turns into something probably I think works out for him.
Carolina.
Again, that's like a 9 or 10. I think Atlanta and Carolina need to be just outbidding each other to get Lamar.
New York Giants.
If they have a way to get rid of Danny Dimes, I love it. That was one of my first responses until I was thinking like, oh wait, they just tagged or not tagged, but what gave Danny that like exclude or that um, very incentive laden deal. But if you could get off Danny Dimes, it makes sense.
Yeah, it'd be kind of funny if just hours after signing Danny Dimes, they trade him. New York Jets.
As a fan, 1, as an analyst, a 10. I think that would just be an awesome pickup for the Jets. They have the draft capital to do it. They already have the young talent, so they can really spend all the money on a quarterback contract.
Miami Dolphins.
Same, 1 as a fan, 10 as an analyst. I don't trust Tua, and I think Lamar just really pushes that team over the top, and they've got the right coach to take advantage of him.
Rip Tua. Pittsburgh Steelers.
I mean, this is one I gave you, so I think it's awesome. Just go ahead and steal Lamar right out from under the Ravens. They would almost have to match it just so that they don't have to play Lamar twice a year. But I think that would elevate the Steelers, though they definitely have some holes to fill, so they might need to keep that draft capital.
How savage would it be if the Pittsburgh Steelers, like bitter rivals of the Baltimore Ravens, came in, stole their franchise quarterback, gave Lamar the most disgusting, like poison pilled filled contract. Like I'm talking like crazy number of incentives, weird like spikes in the contract, super front loaded, so it just hurts you up front. And just like finds a way to steal him from Baltimore. That would be the funniest thing ever. I don't think it
It'd be
happens.
fantastic. No, there's no way it happens, but it'd be awesome to
Yeah,
see.
it'd be great. It's super intriguing. LA Rams.
Yeah, I proposed this to you, and then you kind of talked me back out of it. I could see them just because it's like, 1, what are their draft picks that they're giving up? It's probably like at this point a 25 and a 26 first rounder because that's the only first rounders they have left. So really like, future looking. They love trading picks for players now. They've got a ton of offensive talent, ton of defensive talent, depending what happens with the Jalen Ramsey and or the Jalen Ramsey situation, as well as if Aaron Donald wants to stick around. But I think if Lamar shows up, you have some guys willing to stick around for another year or two to see what happens.
Yeah, there we go. You hit all the different situations. I like the Rams take just because it fits their MO of trading the future for the present, but it's just tough. Like you mentioned, they just don't have a ton to give up. So when do you think this whole thing gets resolved? Like before or after the NFL draft at this rate?
So, do you know with the exclusive tag which first rounders get used?
I think it has to be like consecutive years. I don't know if it necessarily needs to be this year, but I think it can be any combination of like this year, next year kind of
Because I
thing.
think teams like Atlanta and Carolina are more excited to do that if they get to keep their top 10 pick this year. It's not as exciting if they're spending this year's first rounder and then next year's But your thought is if you're getting Lamar, that your next couple first round picks are going to be in the mid 20s to high 30s, hopefully, because the whole point is he's taking you to a divisional game, a championship game. So I think some teams would be jumping at it. Where it would make sense if it was just like, it's just your upcoming first round picks, right? Then Detroit's like, I don't want to give up a 6 and an 18 for Lamar this year. Like that would sting a lot more. So that part, I just don't fully understand how it works. And if I knew that, I think it'd help a lot.
Yeah, and you called this getting ugly earlier this offseason. I thought that, just like a lot of these things, it'd get resolved, but no, this is going to become one of the ugliest stories we see in the NFL all offseason long. So